This is the new Audi RS3, and at a glance, it's a pretty familiar recipe. Now, you take the Audi A3, shove in a 400 horsepower 5-cylinder engine, and charge around 50 grand for it. But Audi's actually been making lots of little updates underneath the skin. That means this new RS3 is a very different beast to its predecessor. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But before I go any further, if you like what you see, why not give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. Let's kick things off with what's familiar about the RS3, and that's what we have right at the heart of it. A 2.5 litre turbocharged 5-cylinder engine producing 400 horsepower like it did in the old car, although torque has been increased just a little bit to 500 Newton meters. Now couple that with a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox and all-wheel drive, and you can go from 0 to 62 in 3.8 seconds. 0.3 of a second faster than the outgoing car, but crucially, it's 0.1 seconds faster than its rival, the Mercedes-AMG A45 S. Now, top speed is limited to 155, but if you pay a little bit of money, you can up that to 180 miles an hour. Again, was pretty standard with the old RS3 too, but the big changes I want to talk about are underneath the skin. Audi has stiffened up the suspension and anti-roll bars to make the RS3 more stable in the corners. There's also a new valve system in the dampers, which means that the RS3 can react faster to changes in the road surface. Now, the rear multi-link suspension has also been beefed up and the subframe has been stiffened. And what's more, they've added an extra degree of negative camber to the front wheels and half a degree to the rear to improve agility. Now, all cars come with an electronically controlled torque splitter, which can send up to 100% of the torque to the outermost rear wheel in the corners to make your car feel a little bit more rear biased. And on that note, there's a new mode called RS Torque Rear, which basically is a fancy way of saying drift mode. And yes, you can finally do some skids in your Audi RS3. And for £5,000, you can get the RS Dynamic Pack, which adds carbon ceramic brakes, also a new and improved adaptive damper system, and most importantly, a sports exhaust. Now, all RS3s sit 10mm lower to the ground compared to the S3, and that just improves the car's road presence. But the big change, obviously, is your typical RS wide body kit. We've got flared arches at the front and rear of the car. It just transforms a family hatchback into something that looks super mean, particularly when you've got that pronounced lip at the base of the skirt, and you also have a little vent behind the front wheel arch. You also get Audi Sport's traditional dual oval exhausts at the back of the car and also reworked bumpers at the front and rear. Now, if you go for the standard RS3, you actually get silver highlights at the front of the car along with 19-inch 10-spoke silver wheels. But on this launch edition car, as well as the carbon and Vorsprung editions, you get gloss black highlights throughout the car along with matte black 19-inch 5-spoke Y-shaped wheels. And to top it all off, you can make your RS3 stand out even more by picking one of the new extremely punchy colours. We've got one of them here, it's Kyalami Green. It costs about £500 and certainly wakes you up in the morning. It's going to come as no surprise that it feels like a pretty regular A3 in here, which isn't too bad because the A3 has a very nice interior in the first place, and there are enough RS touches in here to set it apart from the hatchback. For instance, you get these really lovely quilted leather sports seats, which hug you nicely when you're throwing the car about in a set of bends. There are two steering wheel types to choose from. We've got the round RS wheel here with perforated leather grips, but you can also get a flat-bottomed one if you prefer something that looks a little bit more like a race car. Our car also gets carbon fibre on the dashboard, and we've also got a bit of Alcantara on the doors. And what's more, if you go for the launch edition car, or the very top spec models, you can get the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which isn't too bad, but it's also not amazing. Now, the infotainment system looks pretty much like it's come straight out of the A3, but if you press the RS button on the steering wheel, then you can choose between 4 regular driving modes: efficiency, comfort, auto, and dynamic, as well as RS Individual, where you can basically select different elements of the car that you want in either hardcore mode or slackened off a bit. Personally, I like a more comfortable ride, but I want something that's going to sound a little bit sportier, so I have the exhaust open and synthesized a little bit. RS Performance will put it in its most hardcore setting, and then at the bottom we've got RS Torque Rear, which, as I mentioned earlier, will send most of the torque to the rear axle and make it a lot more slidey. My only gripe is the interior doesn't feel like it's of the quality of a £50,000 car. And that brings me on to price. Now, we've got the RS3 Sportback here, which is the hatchback, and that starts at £54,000 on the road. You can go for a saloon variant if you want, but you can also spend a lot of money on options as well, particularly if you go for the RS Dynamic Pack with the carbon ceramic brakes. So if you add that on to, let's say, the Vorsprung edition, you can be paying nearly 70 grand for a car that, let's face it, is a dressed up version of a £27,000 hatchback. But of course, you shouldn't think of your RS3 like that, particularly when compared to other attainable performance cars. Look at something like the BMW M3, which used to be a 60 grand car, and now you can spend nearly 90 grand on one of those. And that's not me trying to say that the RS3 is a bargain, it's just a reflection of the way the market's going. Anyway, enough about numbers. It's time we took the RS3 out on the road. Now, I've driven my fair share of Audi RS products, and there's a little bit of a formula. They're blisteringly quick in a straight line, feel like they have endless amounts of grip, but they're a bit lifeless in the corners. And I actually found that the previous generation Audi RS3 was kind of one of the worst for it, really. I kind of felt like I was sat on top of the car rather than in it, and it just felt a little bit loose. Didn't feel as fast as I kind of wanted it to be. Gearbox was a little bit dim-witted, and just overall felt like a blunt instrument. And that's why this new RS3 is so impressive, because really there are a lot of similarities between this and the old car, but it's all those small little improvements that Audi has made here and there that has transformed this into a properly fun to drive hyperhatch. The steering in this thing feels seriously impressive. Now, most Audis, including the R8, feel really dead behind the wheel, but there's a lovely amount of weight in this RS3 when you've got it in one of the RS performance modes. And when you want it to slacken off again, just whack it in comfort and it feels like a normal Audi A3. I still think a BMW feels just a little bit nicer, but Audi were always miles behind the competition. But with this RS3, it just feels considerably better. And in the corners, the RS3 is just a lot more fun. It feels so much more alive than pretty much any other Audi I've driven. And I think it's partly down to the new differential, because while you can't feel it on the kind of swoopy roads that I'm on at the moment, if you go around a roundabout and you really chuck it in, you can really feel that the rear end is a lot more playful than before. And if you don't have it in drift mode, you can feel the car rotating around you in a way that I've not felt in an Audi before. It feels like it's really hungry for the apex, whereas the previous RS3 wanted nothing to do with them. It sounds really good too. I mean, it sounds like I'm driving half an R8. I'm really surprised at just how good this sounds. Now, admittedly, it is synthesized. When you put it into RS mode, there is an option to have it pumped into the cabin, but it doesn't sound too ridiculous. There's been a few cars I've been in where the synthesized sound sounds nothing like the original engine, but in here, it just sounds mega. It's a bit firm when you've got it in the RS mode, but if I put it in comfort, everything just slackens off a little bit. Granted, it won't feel quite as comfortable as the regular hatchback, but what do you expect from an RS3? I think people are going to be buying these as their daily drivers, and you really can transform it from a hardcore track car to something that can be easily daily driven without making your passengers want to chuck up. It feels plenty fast enough as well. I kind of feel like 400 horsepower is a bit of a sweet spot, because I can really hammer this on a B road if I want to, and it doesn't feel like it's just trying to spit me off the road all of the time. It's only got a little bit less horsepower than the 450 horsepower RS4, which is mad. The gearbox has improved big time as well. In the old RS3, I found it really quite dim-witted, and there was a lot of the time it just was never in the right gear. But in this car, I haven't really had that problem. There's been the odd time of where it's hung on to gears a little longer than I'd like, and I'm trying to upshift and it's not doing it. But really, those are only small little issues that I've discovered that are pretty normal in something with a dual clutch gearbox. I think the Mercedes has a slight edge when it comes to interior quality. Mercedes just tend to have a bit more showroom appeal when it comes to that compared to the Audi. But as something to drive, I think this RS3 is a huge improvement over pretty much any other RS product that's come before. And while it's not perfect, I still think I'd like a little bit more feel through the steering wheel. And also I'd love the interior to be jazzed up just a little bit more, particularly if I'm spending 50, 60 grand. But if this is a sign of what's to come from Audi RS, I'm seriously excited.